My order from MPC finally came. Let's see what's in the box. All right, let's open this guy up. I ordered a little over 200 cards. All right, well, that's a fat stack. As we can see, I picked a flower pattern. Time to open these up. Okay, so there's 2 commander decks in here. I ordered over 200 cards. I ordered enough for 2 different decks, and then some spares and cards I thought I might want to swap in. So I'm gonna go through here. They should be sorted. The first 100 should be for my Selesnya commander deck that has Karamitra as the commander. So I'm just gonna go through the cards and talk about the choices I made and remark on the art. So Azusa, Lost But Seeking. She lets you play extra lands on your turns. It's helpful when your hand's full of lands. If you draw a lot of cards, you want to play them quick, it can be good to have this in play. If you put it down on turn 3, you can ramp, get some more lands in play faster than your opponents if you have them in your hand. I think the artwork's pretty cool. Arcane Signet, more anime art. I actually watched this anime, I don't remember what it was called, but it was pretty cool because the main character sort of got gaslighted into thinking what she was doing, didn't know if it was right or wrong, had a kind of crime noir story. So I found an anime version. It's Arcane Signet, but with anime. Isn't that great? I went for all anime in this set, so anything that had anime I just picked. So here's an Augur of Autumn. Lets me get cards off the top of my deck. It's card draw in green and white, which is, it's not the best colors for card draw. I found a series of signets that had famous paintings. So it's the Mona Lisa, as in Azorius Signet. And then it was anime, so I had to do it. It's that Tyrant of Gyre Strait. Whenever you play a land, you get to draw a card and you can play an extra land every turn. This does not belong in my Selesnya deck. So I think actually what I'm going through right now must be my 4-color Group Hug deck. Yeah, actually the Azorius Signet had blue, so this must be my Group Hug deck, which draws a ton of cards and needs to play lands. So here's a Birds of Paradise. I don't know if this was ever really printed this way, but I thought it sure looks cool with the text on the top and the bird's neck descending like that. Here's another Signet. This time it's another painting I don't know the name of, but a famous painting. So we're making red. So again, this is my 4-color Group Hug deck. A land, some sort of like Japanese subway station, makes green or white, looks pretty cool. All right, so I actually want to make a commander with this commander deck with Chulane as my commander, and I saw this art and I thought, dang, even though it's going into 99, I want this art. So it's Chulane. He's kind of overpowered, but I'm putting him in the 99, so it's not so overpowered. But look at this artwork. I don't think this is artwork you can get from Wizards of the Coast. This is pretty nice proxy art right here, and it's hollow. I paid double the money to get everything in hollow. Collective Restraint. It had a girl on it. I don't know. It goes with the anime girl theme. So I don't know if the artwork was ever like this, but I decided if I couldn't get artwork that I liked, I would go with the old style borders. So some of my cards have no borders at all. Some of them have the old-fashioned borders. Here's a command tower, but it's actually a picture of some galaxies off in space. So I thought that was pretty neat. This thing just came out, so there wasn't any new fancy art for it yet. So this is just a regular looking Court of Vantress from one of the newer sets. It's a Monarch card. I like putting Monarch into my decks if I can, just to like add to the things the deck can do. This artwork style is a little funky with the mana cost on the top like that, but you know, I thought I want my deck to really stand out, you know, have all sorts of weird art and things going on in it. And this is just, you know, draw 7 cards. It puts your graveyard back in your deck, so it's good for keeping the gas pedal on. You have no maximum hand size. It's a mana rock for 3 that makes a mana of any color and no max hand size. I think this is actually the original art. It's just expanded to take up the whole card. Another land. I really like the way that the weeds, or whatever, the tufts of ocean grass look in this one. Dragon Master Outcast. This is one of my favorite cards to put in the 99 when I make commander decks because it's a 1 mana creature, but it's a real threat. It makes those 5/5 dragons. And this artwork is awesome. She looks kind of like some kind of shinobi ninja, I don't know. Is that a sword? No, it looks like something on the wall, but very cool. So not the original art. Another land. Green and blue. Looks pretty green and blue to me. All right, this is pretty sweet. Somebody printed D&D style class enchantments. So it's a little, you have to kind of read it twice to see how the rules work, but it's got the costs here and the features. They put names on the features to make it more like D&D, so I really like this card. I think it looks pretty sweet. There were a lot of cards that were kind of printed in this style. I didn't like them except for the class ones. What does this do? You can play an additional land on your turns, and lands you control are every basic land type. So I think she's really just in there for the you can play an additional lands on your turns. But, oh no, it's Dryad of the Elysian Grove. Yeah, so the lands are every basic land type is nice. Not really needed in this deck, but the extra lands on every turn. Okay, this card got printed recently. I really like it. You can look at the top card of your deck. You can play creatures from the top of your deck, and your creatures have tap, add 1 mana of any color. So there's a arguably better card, which is only 2 mana enchantment, and it just has creatures you control have tap, add mana of any color. But for 2 more mana, you can play creatures off the top of your deck, which I think in green and white, where card draw is a little at least difficult for me, having a way to access cards off the top of the library and expand your hand, so to speak, is really good. So this in combination with cards that let you play lands off the top of your deck means that you can play like 80% of your deck, because 40 cards in this deck are lands, and 40 cards I think in this deck are creatures. So being able to play lands and creatures off the top of your deck lets you play 4 out of 5 of the cards off the top of your deck. Yeah, it's a Pokemon-themed exotic orchard. What else can I say? Look at that. My goal with these decks is not to have them blend in and trick people into thinking they're real. I want people to say, wow, like your decks have some ridiculous proxies. All right, I found a SpongeBob SquarePants themed expedition map. This is in the deck because it lets me get a land card, which means I can get crazy non-basic lands like Field of the Dead or Gaia's Cradle or Reliquary Tower for maximum hand size. So this is actually a really good strategy piece that I put in most of my decks that have special lands. Pretty much every deck, honestly, except maybe red. If it was a mono red deck, I wouldn't put this in there. Maybe if it was a mono. Yeah, but otherwise, now even then I put it in there for the Reliquary Tower. That always goes in my decks. Exploration, 1 green mana, you can play an additional land on your turns. It's got an anime girl, it had to go in. Felwar Stone, yeah. Okay, the recording stopped, but that's okay, I just started it again. Here we're on Frontier Biovac. I don't know why I picked this one, because this artwork is pretty boring. There probably weren't any better choices, so it's still pretty, honestly, but it's not as crazy as what I'd like. Future Sight. Okay, so Future Sight came out in Onslaught block, which means that it was printed with a frame like this, but this art is different. It's one of my favorite cards in Magic. I love being able to play cards off the top of my deck because it expands your hand and you don't know what you're gonna get. Gives you card advantage. This is a card I really like. The artwork had a girl on it, so I'm going with the whole like really, cringeworthy weeaboo theme for this deck. Just all the girls, all the anime girls. All right, Guraper Orrery. Every player can play additional lands. That's really all I care about with this card. You can draw cards if you have no cards in your hand, but yep, draw cards or play extra lands. That's what it's there for. Ghostly Prison. Yeah, some really cool artwork with a girl on it. It's all about girls in this deck, baby. Creatures can't attack you unless they pay 2. Yeah, if they don't have an answer to this, it just beats token decks. For a card that you could draw, this is pretty good. It can help you in quite a lot of situations, so it's in this deck. Another famous painting turned into a signet. Just a nice land. I like these lands, the ones where you return a land to your hand, because less likely you're gonna get mana screwed. All right, Hoofprints of the Stag. This is one of my favorite Magic cards. Well, I wouldn't say favorite, but it's a Magic card that I like a lot. I have a 60 card deck built around this card where there's 4 of them in it. You draw 4 cards, this thing gets 4 counters, and then you can make a 4/4 white flying creature token. So it only costs 2 mana to put into play, and then over the game you can potentially get multiple 4/4 flying creature tokens from this. So it's a pretty big threat while only coming in at 2 mana, so keeping the overall like mana cost of your deck low. Plus, when you're playing decks where they don't draw enough cards, it's nice to have abilities that you can spend mana on for the permanents in play already. So being able to sink 3 of your mana into here helps when you don't really pull anything that you want to spend mana on, or maybe you're holding like maybe you pull like an instant and you want to save that for a surprise. It helps to have cards like this to give you more options to spend your mana. Horn of Greed, so it's a group hug deck. Whenever anyone plays a land, everyone gets to draw, well, they get to draw a card. So it ramps everyone by keeping your hand full of lands, cards basically. I don't know, it's card draw, which really, this is a group hug deck, so I wouldn't need to put it in here because I've got blue, but it's a group hug deck, so it's supposed to help everyone. And speaking of group hug, we have a Howling Mind. Everyone draws an extra card at the beginning of their draw step. So the strategy with Howling Mind would be that you would tap it so that they don't get to draw a card until it's your turn. But this is a group hug deck, so I don't do that. I just put it into play and everyone just draws extra cards. So this deck's all about drawing tons of cards and playing tons of lands. This card came out in a newer set, Inga and Asika. So I like it because it makes it so that all your creatures can tap to add a mana of any color. You can only use the mana to cast creature spells, but that's fine. You're going to have plenty of creatures in your hand. And then if you tap 3 or more creatures to make mana to cast that creature, you can draw a card. So it's got card draw, it's got mana generation. I think it's a pretty solid choice to put in the deck. Another 2 land card where you return a land to your hand and it taps for 2. All right, here's another famous art piece turned into a signet. We're going to have every signet except the signets that have black in this deck. Don't make me do the math. Some kind of Japanese water wave painting. Another land, looks great. It's a 3-colored land because this is a 4-colored deck. All right, we've got Kazul, the Tyrant of the Cliffs. So he says whenever your opponent attacks you, unless they pay 3 mana, you get a 3/3 red ogre. So it's basically just a rattlesnake to keep your opponents from attacking you. So this, along with those enchantments that make your opponent pay to attack you, it's supposed to kind of discourage your opponent from attacking you. So you're hugging the group, you're making everyone draw lots of cards, but you're making everyone be able to play extra lands. And why would they want to attack you when you've got all these rattlesnakes in play? So this deck is kind of meant to just accelerate the group without dying too quickly, in case anyone says, I don't like your nonsense, mister. Another 3-colored land, it's got cycling. I've played lands like this in other decks, and sometimes you do cycle them. You know, if your hand's full of cards and you don't need more lands, the cycling can be good. But it's a 3-colored land, and more importantly, it's a forest, island, mountain, which means if I play a card that says get a forest or an island or a mountain, then I can get this instead of a basic land card. So that comes up quite often, actually. All right, it's Koma, the Cosmos Serpent. I don't know if this is the best card that you could be playing for 7 mana, but I sure think it's pretty strong because it makes a 3/3 Serpent creature token every turn, not just your turn. So if you're sitting in a pod with 3 other players, so there's 4 of you total, then by the time it becomes your turn, you're going to have 4 3/3 blue Serpent creature tokens again, or rather, when it's your turn again. And then you can sacrifice them to make this guy indestructible, which is like a pretty good ability. But you can also just tap your opponent's things to, I don't know, prevent them from attacking you, or prevent them from blocking you. I don't think you could use this to stop a Nevral's Disc. Its activated abilities can't be activated this turn. That would be interesting to see if like you could actually use this to stop a Nevral's Disc. So I'll have to look up the rules and find out if, let's say the player the first phase of the turn is untap, so you can't tap it before they untap. And if you did, it would just untap. So they untap it, then you go to target it with this ability. They would then tap it in response and destroy everything in play. Maybe if they tap it, nope, I don't think this can stop a Nevral's Disc, but it's still a good card. It's a 6/6 that just makes those 3/3s. So you can eventually just overrun your opponents with those 3/3 tokens. It's Bugs Bunny. The real card is Kawain Iterant Meddler, I guess. It's in the deck because it says tap, each player can draw a card, and then each player who drew gains a life. So it's a group hug card. It only costs 2 mana, and it's just making everyone draw. So classic group hug right here. All right, and then we have Kynaios and Tiro of Meletis. This is the commander of the deck. So I like this art more than the original art, and this art is pretty freaking awesome. It's got 2 knights on it, so that it's still the same spirit of the card, which is 2 different people. The knights just take over the art. Their flags and furls are flowing over the text, so they really pop out of the art there. And the card, the oracle text. So the commander for this deck says, at the beginning of your end step, draw a card. Each player may put a land card from their hand onto the battlefield. Then each opponent who didn't draws a card. So if your opponents put a land into play, they don't get to draw. But if they don't put a land into play, then they do get to draw. But you get to do both. So it's a group hug commander, but it does give you a slight advantage all by itself. And it's, as you can see, it's 4 colors of mana. I wish it had black. If this thing had black mana, I would use this commander for so many different decks. But there's so much you can do with this commander already. I have plans to make a different kind of deck with this one that's not a group hug, and really I'm going to be excited to put that together. So that's the commander right there. All right, Magus of the Future. It's Future Sight, but it's as a creature. So this was printed after Future Sight, I believe, but it's the same effect. It's a card that lets you play extra lands, and it can return lands to your hand so that you can play more lands in case you don't have any lands in your hand. So kind of gives you like infinite, it gives you near infinite landfall triggers as long as you have the mana for it. But it can give things trample, which if you have like a creature whose power and toughness is equal to the lands you have, but it doesn't have trample, putting trample on there is really helpful. I'm not a huge Rick and Morty fan, but I don't dislike the show, and so I couldn't pass up the chance to have a Rick and Morty card. It's a land. I think there was definitely better art, but Rick and Morty, come on. Multani Yavamaya's Avatar. So this is one of the finishers for the deck. Its power and toughness is equal to the number of lands you control, and it's got trample. And reach, which is pretty helpful, but trample, that's really what helps you finish players off. A full art land card, just the art is taken over the whole card here. It looks pretty cool to me. And it makes 3 colors, so, you know, if you pull this as one of your lands, chances are you're going to be able to play your commander. I like this card. I don't like the original art, so I was really happy when I found this other art. I think this other art looks a lot cooler to me. Really looks a lot more like an Elder Dinosaur to me than the original art. He can't be countered. You have no maximum hand size. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, you get to draw a card. You can discard 3 cards to exile him and then return him to the battlefield tapped. So basically, once he hits the board, he's probably not going to die as long as you can discard 3 cards to save him. And he's going to draw you a ton of cards because of his, whenever your opponent plays a non-creature spell, you get to draw a card ability. And because it gives you no max hand size, you're not going to have to discard those cards. So, you know, basically, this is a really solid card to have in play. Only downside is he costs 7 mana. But in a deck like this, that's not hard to achieve at all. Norn's Annex, it's another propaganda type effect. This time it's on a white artifact with Phyrexian mana, but the effect is the same. Your controller, the owner of the creature either pays a white or 2 life. If they're not playing a deck with white mana, then they'll have to pay the 2 life when they want to attack you. So that can be pretty good. It's another way to keep your opponents from attacking you. Nightwalker. This is Omnath Locus of Creation, but I think I saw this anime and it was pretty cool, so I thought, let's go get the anime art. So he just basically, he's in the deck for 2 reasons. So one, he's a free creature, because when you play him, he lets you draw a card. So that's good. Like, he's basically just a free 4/4. But then he's not just free. Like, he doesn't just sit there. He gives you landfall, and The effects that I care about are gaining 4 life, and then the second time you play a land, you get 4 mana. So if you play him and then you play 2 lands on that same turn, which is very possible in this deck full of cards that say you can play extra lands on your turns, then he actually nets out for 0 mana because he produces the exact mana that it costs to play him. So it's a strong card. The last ability, it just does 4 damage to every opponent in their Planeswalkers. I mean, Planeswalkers aren't very common, and 4 damage in Commander is like whoop-de-doo, but it's just a solid all-around card to have in the deck, so it's in there. Oracle of Moldiah. So everyone knows Oracle. You can play 2 lands per. You can play an additional land per turn. You can play lands off the top of your deck. But it had this really cool kind of anime girl art that I also like. So, you know, just a nice card to have in the deck. On land, this time it looks like they actually just carefully removed all of the borders, but left the text in place. So different style on full art, but I like it. Path of Ancestry. I like this art a lot more than the other art. It's a mana of any color. Good to have in a 4-color deck. I decided to keep the dual lands looking very original. So instead of new looking art or nice looking art, I have all the dual lands looking like this. And one of the reasons why is so that as I'm searching through the deck, if I'm looking for a basic land, these will just pop out to me as they have the basic land types. They're not basic lands, but they have mountain and plains and such. So thought I'd keep these looking a little original. Propaganda. There was some way nicer art for Propaganda. I wanted to go with the one that had Garfield on it and it said, "You are not immune to propaganda." That one was crazy cool. But since I was going with the anime girl theme, I had to get this anime girl swinging an American flag. That's some propaganda I could eat up all day. Let's go. All right, another class card. Looks like I did not get this one in the Dungeons and Dragons style. So the Druid class looks one way, and the Ranger class looks another way. I think I picked this one because it has a sort of anime-looking girl on it. But if I did not, then I definitely would have gone with the Dungeons and Dragons style. And what does this do? Oh, the 5th ability, or 3rd ability. You can look at the top card of your deck at any time and you can cast creatures from the top of your deck. So that's what this deck does. It makes lots of mana, it draws lots of cards, and it just puts a lot of stuff into play. And it discourages the opponents from attacking you the whole time. Another 3 mana land. It's got an anime girl. She's not a mermaid, I guess. Sure looks like a mermaid. I guess she's just swimming underwater. Can't beat the anime girls. That theme is just too good. All right, Rejuvenating Springs. It's another Japanese-themed land. Or anime, I should say, but that is Japanese, so whatever. Reliquary Tower. There are hundreds and hundreds of art choices for this one. This one had a pretty looking woman on it, so I was like, all right, let's go with this one. And it's got the little heart symbol. Isn't that cute? So no max hand size. This is one of the lands that I would tutor for, using the cards that let me get a land, not just a basic land, but any land, because you're gonna want no max hand size with this deck pretty quickly. Rites of Flourishing is another group hug card. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card. Each player may play an additional land on each of their turns. So it just goes with the group hug theme. Everyone's getting bonuses, not just you. But really, I mean, you play this on turn 3, you're never going to get mana screwed. You're going to have a land drop every turn. Your hand's going to blow up in size. You're going to need that no max hand size. You're going to need that ability to play additional lands per turn. Your opponents, they're going to have a harder time. Their hand, they might have to be discarding stuff at the ends of their turns because they can't play more than... Well, this actually does let them play additional lands on turns. Rocco the Street Chef. So it's anime. I'm not a One Piece fan, but it's anime, so it had to be this one. It goes with the group hug theme. At the beginning of your end step, each player exiles the top card of their library. Until your next end step, each player may play that card they exiled this way. So everyone gets a card basically at the end of your turn. That's pretty group huggy. And then whenever a player plays a land from exile or casts a spell from exile, you can put a 1/1 counter on target creature and create a food token. So that's not what this is in the deck for. This card is just in the deck for the first ability. But that second ability, you know, that's cool. If you were going to make a commander deck, I think that second ability, around this card rather, the second ability would come in handy. But in this card deck, he's in the 99 just for that first ability. The ability to draw an extra card at the end of your turns and exile it. If it's a land, you just play that land on the next turn. If it's a spell, hopefully you can play it, otherwise you lose it. All right, here's another full art land. Looks pretty nice. Comes into play untapped. Sanctum Weaver. Add X mana of any color to your mana pool, where X is the number of enchantments you control. So I like this card because it's a mana dork that costs 2, and in the worst case scenario it makes 1 mana, so then it does lose to like Llanowar Elves and things like that. But assuming that you have like 10 or 15 enchantments in your deck, you're probably going to have an enchantment or 2 in play, at which point this is a mana dork that taps for 2 or 3. And so from my point of view, that seems like a solid choice for mana ramp. And it's a creature, so generally having your mana rocks as creatures, having them as mana dorks, it's usually good. Yeah, they can get wiped out by board wipes, but if you have a way to bring creatures back to the board, then you can get your dorks back. So I like it. Another dual land. This time it's Savannah. Kind of hard to read the text. All right, Scute Swarm. So yeah, there were some way cooler looking Scute Swarm artworks to choose from, but this one's got an anime girl on it. She's holding a ladybug, so it goes with the anime theme, so had to do it. I like Scute Swarm because this card by itself is often a finisher. This deck plays a lot of lands, so if your opponents don't just kill spell it immediately, then you're going to overflow the board, and if they don't wipe it to answer, then you're going to win with just a swarm of Scute bugs. So it's a 3 mana card that can win you the game. It goes in most of my green decks. Sea of Clouds. This art is just so cool. It's a land, who cares, but look at this art. So nice. Continuing on, we've got another triple mana, triple land here. Another signet that looks like famous artwork. This time it's the Last Breakfast or Last Dinner or whatever that Bible scene was. Sivala, Explorer, returned. So I like this card. It's real group huggy. Tap, each player reveals the top card of their deck. For each non-land card, you get to add a green mana and you gain 1 life. So, and then everyone just keeps that card. They draw it. So it makes everyone draw a card when you tap it every turn, basically. So it's another group hug card, but it gives you green mana. So kind of lets you ramp a little bit. So it's a little bit asymmetric bonus there. Shattered Angel. All right. I love this card. It's probably not so great, but I just really like this card. I found some cool female artwork, so that's fun. But 5 mana, 3/3 Angel. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you get to gain 3 life. So it's one of the only life gain cards in the deck. For a single card, so the way I think about life gain, depending on the deck, is I might only want to put a few life gain cards into the deck just to have some life gain in the deck. That's what this card is in the deck for. It's it doesn't really combo with anything because this deck does not have a life gain theme. It just hits the board and gains you life, and theoretically it could gain you a lot of life. So this card is in the deck really just to gain a lot of life and keep you in the game. Nothing really combos with it. How are you supposed to combo with your opponent doing stuff? You can't force your opponent to play lands, though likely they will play lands. But I mean, if you think about it, if you've got 3 opponents, this thing hits the board on turn 5. By the turn 6 comes around, you might have gained like 9 life. You know, every turn cycle, you might gain 9 life. So it's a lot of life gain on a flyer. So it's not bad. I think in 2023, there's probably way stronger choices, but I like this card, so it's in the deck. Oh, and because people are going to be drawing extra cards and playing extra lands, it does actually synergize with the deck more. Another double land card looks pretty Simic to me. Another artwork signet, Simic again. A beautiful full art land. Okay, this one is ridiculous. Smothering Tithe. It's an anime girl. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they can pay 2 colorless. If they don't, you get a treasure token. So something I like about this deck is that I can put cards like this in here that don't like have too big of an impact. I mean, Smothering Tithe is a really strong card. Everyone knows this. But you know, it probably wouldn't make the cut in most of my decks. But in this deck, everyone's drawing cards. Probably more than drawing probably at least 2 cards per turn. So you're not just going to have a treasure token per player by the time it gets back to you. You might have like 2 or 3 treasure tokens for each player. by the time the turn cycle gets back to you. So having all that extra mana is really helpful for playing all those extra cards that you're going to be drawing. So it really fits well into this deck. Another land, full art, spectators feeding. Another land. Oh no, it's not. It's Sphere of Safety. Okay, so this card's pretty cool. So creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless they pay X for each of those creatures, where X is the number of enchantments you control. So by itself for 5 mana, this kind of sucks. Propaganda and the other ones, they're only 3 mana and they make your opponent pay 2. But since this deck has a lot of enchantments, it's likely that they're going to have to pay at least 2, if not 3 or 4 mana per creature that's attacking you. So if they don't have an answer for this card, even if you don't pull Propaganda or Ghostly Prison, this card alone could be making them pay 4 or 5 mana per attacker and just making it prohibitive to attack you. So goes really well with the theme of don't attack me, I'm helping everyone. Attack someone else. Another double land card, another double mana card. There's probably only like a handful of basic lands in this whole deck. This one's got some really sweet art. Look at that lightning. Sundown Pass, another double land card. Just beautiful art on all of these. More double land. All right, I like this one. Sunscorch Regent. So earlier, I was showing off Shattered Angel, the 5 mana angel, 3/3 flying, and you gain a life whenever your opponent plays a land. Because this deck makes your opponents draw extra cards and play extra lands, the Shattered Angel is better in this deck. Now here's Sunscorch Regent. He's also 5 mana, 3 colorless and 2 white, so he's basically directly competing with the Shattered Angel. Flying, okay. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, put a 1/1 counter on Sunscorch Regent and you gain a life. So overall, I think this is going to gain you less life than the Shattered Angel, but he becomes a huge flyer. So he becomes a big threat by himself. If your opponent doesn't have any flying blockers, then yeah, probably win you the game if they don't have an answer to it. But even if they do have answers to it, he's gaining you life. So it's another life gain card in the deck. I think this is a pretty strong life gain card in general, so that's why it's in the deck. Because you want cards that gain you life and do stuff. So this is another double land. It's Taiga. There we go. Temple Bell. It's another group hug deck. It's an artifact. Costs 3 mana. It says tap. Each player draws a card. So you wait until the end of your opponent's turn, and then you tap, and everyone draws an extra card. So it's a group hug deck. You can strategically do it so that it works. The timing works out for you. But at only 3 mana, it's very likely that you're at least going to draw 3 mana by turn 3, and then you can play this Temple Bell and start drawing extra cards. So something I really like about this deck is, even though it probably won't win very often because it's ramping your opponents a lot, at least you'll never get mana screwed and you'll always get to play a lot of cards, which to me is fun. All right, what is this? What is this? Thassa, God of the Sea? All right, Sister Freed. This art is crazy. Look at this art. This is crazy. This is nuts. This is absolutely nuts. If I was going to build a commander around Thassa, God of the Sea, I would definitely go with this this cool artwork here. As long as your devotion, whatever, she's not a creature, who cares? Okay, at the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1, 2 mana, target creature you control can't be blocked. So that lets you close the game out. You drop this, and suddenly your guy that's like a 15/15, because you have 15 lands in play, suddenly he's unblockable. But then also, what I also like is at the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. So at 3 mana, that's early enough that you still care about hitting all your land drops. So being able to scry at the beginning of each turn is really powerful to me. So honestly, I think the reason why this card is in the deck is just because it lets you scry 1 at the start of each of your turns for 3 mana. But all the other abilities are really strong, not to mention it's a 5/5 god, indestructible on a stick. It's an enchantment, so it counts for the enchantment count on Sphere of Safety or whatever it was called. It's just a decent card to have in the deck. Helps. The scrying is, again, the scrying, but then the unblockable at the end. It's a good card. The World Tree. I don't think I would ever actually pay the 10 mana to get all the gods in the deck, but I did make sure to put a few extra gods in the deck just in case. So what does it say? As long as you control 6 or more lands, every land has tap, add a mana of any color. Yeah, that's pretty sick. Okay, I forgot about that. So it lets you get all the mana that you need and not worry about picking the mana colors to cast your spells. But then also it can get you gods. Unlikely that I would do the gods thing, but there are multiple gods in this deck, so I could do that. Time Twister. This card is like hundreds of dollars Good thing I didn't buy it. It's got an anime girl. That's why it's in the cut. Each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into the library and draws 7 cards. So you might have more than 7 cards in your hand. I would say don't play this. But no matter what, with this deck, you're going to be having so many cards in play that draw extra cards every turn that it's going to be really hard to get your hand down to 0. So this is really more about being able to shuffle your graveyard into your library to just keep the game going. So that, you know, if you ever want to sit down and have a crazy commander game where you play like every card in your deck and you don't deck yourself, then having a card like Time Twister in there is really helpful. So, because I always try to think like, hey, once my cards go into the graveyard, is there any way to get them back into my hand? And so Time Twister is a way to do that. Here's another cool looking double land. It's got like a Japanese anime theme. Isn't that nice? Another dual land. It's Tropical Island. Another dual land. It's Tundra. So we've got almost all the dual lands. If we had black in this deck, we would have all the dual lands. Uvenwald Hydra. I love this card. This is one of my favorite green cards to put in commander decks. It's 6 mana, so it's quite expensive, but it's got reach, so it can block flyers. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control, so on turn when you play it, likely you played it for 6 mana with 6 lands. Likely it's a 6/6 reach. So really helpful for just blocking those pesky flyers that are stealing the Monarch from you, or who knows what. But most importantly, the reason why it's in the deck, when it enters the battlefield, you can search your deck for a land and put it on the battlefield tapped. It lets you get Reliquary Tower so that you don't have a maximum hand size. But if you already have Reliquary Tower, it lets you get other cards like Field of the Dead, so you can start making 2/2 zombies. I don't know if that's in this deck. Field of the Dead might not be in this deck, but definitely Reliquary Tower is. And probably Gaia's Cradle, although I'm not sure on that one. All right, Vivian, Monster's Advocate. So she's a little expensive, 5 mana, but I mean, she's a Planeswalker. She can let you play creature spells off the top of your deck. That's why she's in the deck. 5 mana. It's like a crappy future sight for creatures only. But she also creates beast tokens, and she lets you search your deck for creatures of lesser mana value when you do her -2. So she can do some other cool stuff, but she's mostly in this deck just so you can play creature spells off the top of your deck. And speaking of playing creature spells off the top of your deck, for 1 mana less, you can get Vizier of the Menagerie. So you can play creature spells off the top of your deck. Yep, we're just playing stuff off the top of our deck, which we're drawing so many cards, we probably don't even need to do that, but with unlimited hand size, why not? Another double land. We've got so many dual lands. Wayward Swordtooth, what is this? You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Wayward Swordtooth can't attack or block unless you have the city's blessing. Oh, I know what this is. It's literally Wayward Swordtooth, but the normal art for this has a dinosaur. This is like a ancient-looking panther beast. The type is dinosaur, but I don't know. I thought it looked really cool, so just changed it up a little bit here. But 3 mana, you can play an extra land on your turns. That's why it's in the deck. All right, one of my favorite red cards ever, Wheel of Fortune. This one has, I used to play League of Legends. I can't remember the name of this character, but it's got that character who picks random cards and throws them. I always thought he was a pretty cool character. It's a Wheel of Fortune that's themed after that. So it's not a wheel, what do you know? But it's still random chance because it's shuffling a card deck. I like it. And of course it's in the deck because in case you're out of cards, Wheel of Fortune, now you got 7. All right, Windborn Muse. It's another rattlesnake card. It's an anime girl. It's 2 anime girls, in fact. There's one in the background. It's a 2/3 flying for 4 mana, so kind of weak. Creatures can't attack you unless they pay 2. So it's another don't attack me card. Wizard class. You have no max hand size. That's why it's in the deck. The other abilities, who cares? Let's see, you can draw 2 cards. That actually can come in handy. And then whenever you draw a card, put a 1/1 counter on a target creature you control. I mean, yeah, that's pretty good. I don't think I would ever pay the 5 mana to put this up to here unless I had like no other better choices, which is kind of like not saying anything, that statement I just made. That was like a nonsense, like of course you wouldn't do it unless you had a better choice. But yeah, I really only care about the you have no max hand size, and then if it's early game, being able to draw 2 for 3 mana, maybe you need that land, so. Wizard class. All right, I love this card. I would not mind making a commander deck around this card because there's a theme I really like, which is just draw cards tribal, where you shuffle cards back into your deck and then draw the same amount. So there's lots of cards that do that. This one does that. Well, actually, no, it doesn't do it, but it draws you cards, and it says whenever your opponents draw cards, you get 1/1 snakes. So you play Wheel of Fortune with this in play, and you'll get, if you have 3 opponents, you'll get 21 snake tokens. And there's a ton of effects like Wheel of Fortune that make everyone draw 7 new cards. And they're all in red and blue for the most part. So this would be a really fun card to make a commander deck around, where it's just Wheel of Fortune and all the cards that have everyone draw 7, like Time Twister and Days Undoing and such. Well, maybe not Days Undoing because it ends the turn, so it might clear the stack. I'm not sure if it would clear the stack and get rid of the triggers, but anyway, it's anime themed. It's got artwork from that one where she has to like clean up a bathhouse and the slime guy comes, and this is her like little boyfriend. Not boyfriend, but like, you get it. He turns into a dragon, isn't that nice? So I really like this card, and the artwork is neat. By itself, it can be a finisher for the deck, because by itself, it's making those 1/1 snakes every time your opponents draw. They're drawing extra cards every turn because of all the other cards in the deck, and there's multiple wheel effects. So you're going to be making a lot of snake tokens with this, and he draws you cards. He's flying, so, you know, worst case scenario, he might draw you 3 cards because he's got 3 power. So it's just a really strong card. I would like to make a commander deck around him, but right now he's just in the 99. All right, this one's pretty dope. It's a land. Each land is also a forest. So if you had any cards with Forest Walk, this would be ridiculous, because then your guys would be unblockable. But I picked it because it has artwork that I don't really recognize the artwork, but it's anime themed for sure. Kind of reminds me of that bad guy from Naruto, the Orochimaru guy. Either way, though, it's anime themed and it's a good land. This deck doesn't really need all your lands to be forests, but whatever. All right, this one's a newer card that came out. So I've been working on this deck for 2 years, and this was obviously not in there when I made the deck because it didn't exist. It just got recently printed. So she's 4 mana. It's pretty expensive. She's a 4/4, not so bad. She lets you make a copy of an enchantment, and if it's an aura, you get to do some extra stuff. Oh, you even get to untap her. I didn't see that. So then I guess you could do it as many times as you had auras. I totally did not see that, but that's fine. There's no auras in the deck. That's not why she's in the deck. She's in the deck because she lets you make copies of propaganda. Now, she says you can only have 1 copy of each of the enchantments, but that's fine. I still think it's worth it to have her in the deck. You can make a copy of your future sight so that if your opponent deletes one of the future sight, you still have another future sight in play. And as long as, even if they destroy the original aura, or rather enchantment, you can still make a copy of the copy, because she says as long as you don't have an enchantment with the same name. So the tokens have the same name, but if they destroy the original but the token is still in play, then you can use the ability and make a copy of the token, because you only have 1 enchantment in play with that name. It's the token. So then you get 2 tokens. But so she lets you make duplicates of enchantments. Honestly, she's just really freaking good in any deck that runs enchantments, because she lets you double your enchantments for only 2 mana. So I've already shown quite a few strong enchantments. Like all of my class cards, Ranger class, Druid class, Cleric. I don't think Cleric class is in here, but Wizard class, Propaganda, Ghostly Prison, Sphere of Safety. You could make a copy of that enchantment, Overflowing Spring or whatever it's called, where everyone draws an extra card every turn and plays an extra land per turn. She just goes so good in the deck, even though there's no auras in the deck. So just a really strong card to have in the deck. If your opponent can't wipe out all enchantments in play, if they don't have a way to remove all enchantments from the game, like destroy all enchantments, then this card right here will probably it'll probably win you the game, because there's no way your opponent's going to be able to swing into you when you have 2 Ghostly Prisons and 2 Propagandas or whatever. Like, it's just... So that's why she's in the deck. All right, anime themed. The art kind of sucks. The whole card looks kind of gross, but it's anime, so I had to do it. Let's see, what is this? Archivist of Ogma. Okay, so 2 mana flash creature. When an opponent searches a library, you gain a life and draw a card. So your opponents are going to be tapping their Terramorphic Expanse, their Forbidden Orchard, or whatever it's called, to go through their deck and get a land, let alone tutors, which is, they're going to be playing lands that tap and let them get lands from their deck. This lets you draw cards when they do it, and you get to gain a life. So it's not going to be happening that many times, but for 2 mana, you're going to draw at least 1 card off of this, assuming you play it at the right time. So it's a solid choice in the deck. Keeps the mana curve kind of low. Another double land, just beautiful art here. All right, whoa, this is crazy. What is this? What's going on here? All right, well, it's a woman, so I had to pick it because the original art does not have a woman on it. Her power and toughness is equal to other lands you control. Non-token creatures you control are forest lands. All right, so basically, she's like the best landlord because she turns your non-token creatures into lands. So let's say you only have like 5 lands in play. She'd be a 5/5, right? But then you've also got 2 creatures in play. So, oh, non-token creatures you control. Oh, so she turns into a forest as well. I didn't see that. So then she'd be the 3rd creature on turn 5, and she'd be an 8/8 because you'd have 3 creatures that are also forests, and then you'd have 5 lands. So she's bigger than any other landlord will ever get because she turns your creatures into lands as well, and then she counts them for her power and toughness. So that's why she's in the deck. She makes it so that your creatures can tap for green, and she's just a big frickin' body, so you can start swinging her at people. So unless they have an answer, it's just a big body. So it's good to have a big body in play. It'd be better if she had trample, but there's ways to give her trample. All right, Augur of Autumn. I decided I wanted to pick some really old-looking art for this. So Augur of Autumn is a new card. It was never printed with the old-style frames and borders like this. And I found someone who, they made it look like one of the oldest cards. So it's just another play cards off the top of your deck card. It fits well in this deck. You can look at the top card of your library at any time. You can play lands from the top of your deck. And if you have creatures with 3 different powers, you can play creatures off the top of your deck too. So pretty, for only 3 mana, it's pretty strong. Aura Shards. Yeah, this card's crazy. This card's ridiculous. It's an enchantment. It costs 3 mana. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can destroy an artifact or an enchantment. So if your opponents don't take this out, you are going to be the only one with artifacts and enchantments in play. So it's a really strong card. And it doesn't say non-token. So there's some cards in here that make token creatures. When those come into play, you get to destroy your opponent's artifacts and enchantments. It's a very strong card. I put it in just about any white and green deck. Avenger of Zendikar. Yep, it's an anime girl. So this is a finisher for sure. Because, you know, let's say you play it for just 7, and you only have 7 lands, you get 7 plants. And then every time you play a land, your plants get bigger. So it's strong. I don't know what to say. It's Avenger of Zendikar. And nothing in the deck really combos with it except the fact that the deck makes lots of lands. If you found a way to like flicker this, obviously it would be ridiculous. Or play it from the graveyard. This deck doesn't have a way to do really any of that. Just coming into play by itself, just an Avenger of Zendikar by itself, he's just in here to finish the game. It's a big 7 mana card. It's a bomb. That's all it is. There's like no synergies really. It's a freaking bomb for 7 mana. Because you don't want to play a deck and not have a way to win. It's going to make your opponents not like you. You want to have ways to win. All right, Bane of Progress. It's Bane, get it, from Batman, but it's also Bane of Progress. When it comes into play, destroy all artifacts and enchantments. Put a counter on this guy for each counter destroyed this way. So, you know, he might get big. He could get big. That's not why he's in the deck. He's in the deck to destroy all of the artifacts and enchantments. Oh, you know, I think I might have made it into the next deck. I'm gonna have to start counting and see if I made it into the next deck because Bane of Progress doesn't really fit in this 4-colored group hug deck. So time for me to backtrack and figure out